Okay, you can start.
Thank you. So, hi everybody, and welcome to the Riyadh Meetup Community Meetup for on this beautiful, lovely Friday afternoon, morning, whatever the time is at your time zone. Thank you for taking this time and attending this session. So, Riyadh Mulesoft Group was founded few years ago. This is the eighth meetup, and we have about 200 plus members. And we want to thank all the members who have supported in this effort, and we hope to see this community grow in the coming months and years. Um, so we at InfoView Systems want to do, share our learnings and encourage best practice and knowledge share by collaborating with our communities and MuleSoft communities to benefit everybody in this space. So my name is Shri. I head the marketing and partner relationships at InfoView Systems, and I have with me Satya, who is one of the leaders for Riyadh MuleSoft Meetup Group. He is also a MuleSoft mentor and champion in many verticals with 20 years of plus experience of uh, in the software and integration space, in the tech space as well. So that is the intro. So now we also have Royston and Bernard who are going to be talking today, and it's great to have you all. And I think it's going to be a great session today. So um, we also have a couple of our community members who've been with us and attended, more than attended many of the MuleSoft meetups. So thank you all for encouraging us and being there and coming back and attending our sessions and learning and best practice sharing as well. So yeah. So that's anybody wants to talk about themselves, introduce themselves, go ahead. I mean, this is going to be a very interactive kind of 5 minutes that we can have before we kick off.
Thanks, Rij. Yeah, so let me introduce myself. My name is Satya. Okay, and uh, I'm the meetup group leader for the Riyadh as well as the Dubai. Okay, as well as the speaker in the different. I speak in different countries, different regions in the MuleSoft meetup and summit. So that's all about me. I work in Infobee System as CTO, and I have another organizer, my colleague Ala. He's I think not joining today due to some personal reason. Maybe he will join later. Okay, so that's all about me. And without taking much time, I will request to Rushton and Bernard to start the session so that they can introduce themselves and start the session. This interesting session.
Okay, thank you, Satya, for the introduction. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us this afternoon, morning, from wherever you are. I have with me today with Royston, and we're going to be presenting on best practices for access management. So just a short introduction of myself. I'm Bernard. I'm currently based in Singapore, and I'm in the customer success and strategy team, similar to Royston. So I'll get Royston to share a bit about himself as well. Royston, please.
Thank you very much, Bernard. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Royston Lobo, and I work as a senior technical architect in the customer success team at MuleSoft. I've been part of MuleSoft for running up to 3 years now, and I'm also based in Singapore along with Bernard. So it's a pleasure to be able to join you virtually online. I know many of you are in Riyadh yourselves, but no matter where in the world you are, I think with the pandemic, we've all grown better, closer together and spread across lots of geographies. So very excited to be here today. And thank you, Satya, for inviting us to speak. All right. So Bernard, if you can move on to the next slide, please. So I hope you all know that today's topic is around access management. And more importantly, about us sharing some good practices around access management and giving you all an overview into the new functionality in the platform, which is called Teams. Now, if you have questions around any of the content we are speaking about today, we'd prefer if you were to type it in the chat, and that way either Bernard or I can monitor the chat and answer it. However, if it's an urgent question, you can unmute yourself and ask as well. But we have planned for time at the end for questions of a generic nature. So I hope that that works for you. All right. I know there's also a Kahoot quiz at the end. So if you stick around to the end, you have a good chance of winning some prizes as well. Also, some of the questions from the Kahoot are going to be from our presentation today. So I do recommend you pay attention. All right, go to the next slide, please. So I wanted to start off by sharing a little bit about why access management is important in today's context. Now, if you see the next slide I have on screen here, almost all of us here have a set of keys. Some of them might be digital keys, and there's a lot of innovation in this space. However, historically, we've had physical keys. Now, if you think about the most precious keys that you have, maybe it's the key to your house, the key to your locker, or maybe an equivalent of a digital key like an internet banking password. Think about how important this is to you, and maybe how few people you actually trust with these keys. And imagine now these keys were to get lost, or if everyone in the world had the same copy of your key and therefore could get access to whatever you have. Now that is the real risk that we are having in organizations and even in our personal lives today, is that we have a set of keys that if they are lost in the open, it makes life very complicated, difficult, and frustrating for us to continue on with. Now, very often, humans are actually one of the weak points in an IT, in a security framework within an organization. And what that means is that the processes around us as human beings are the ones that are most likely going to be the ones that put an organization at risk. Many of us have seen the joke about people writing down their passwords on a sticky note and then pasting it next to their monitor. So when you come into their house or next to their workstation, you have the password and you have the machine and you can log in straight away. So you can see that that's a very simple example of how access management, even though you might have the most secure system, if you don't think about it holistically, you run the risk of having breaches, which can cost your organization a lot of money. If you go into the next slide, you'll see an actual example of how Cisco suffered because of a breach in access management. So to summarize the story in front of you, last year, a story came out about a former Cisco employee who pleaded guilty to charges around him accessing things that he wasn't supposed to after he finished his employment. So you can see here that he deleted a number of VMs that were supporting the WebEx application. And by that, the impact of that was that 16,000 accounts were shut down. It cost Cisco more than $1 million in employee time and also more than $1 million in refunds to customers. Huge amount of impact for something that is potentially preventable. And I'm sure in hindsight, Cisco is regretting the fact that they didn't have the processes in place to avoid the situation. But this can happen to anyone, to any organization, because there are different weak points that we all need to be aware of and understand how to trade off these challenges with what we need to do as an organization as well. If we move on to the next slide, we'll see that the challenges that we most observe working in the customer success team is that very often IT systems and HR systems are not well integrated with each other when it comes to access management. Now, you might already have first-hand experience of having, 7 different username and passwords for your job at work. That is an example where integration is not there between access management. And the problem is not that you have 7 different usernames and password. That is not the biggest problem. The problem is when someone finishes up their employment, is that they might still have access to things that they should not have access to because the username and password is not integrated to whether they're still employed with the organization. That problem becomes bigger when your organization grows. So when you have, a company of 20 people and you have 3 systems, it might be simple. But when you have a company of 50,000 people and you have 2,000 systems, you suddenly have a lot of different access management challenges. Like, you don't want your employees to have to remember 1,000 different passwords. That's also very difficult. Even though it might be the most secure, it's challenging. So you need a way to manage this. And then the third challenge we find is that very often customers and organizations do not have the time and the bandwidth to actually review what's happening on the platform until it is too late. So for example, in the Cisco use case, if someone at Cisco was potentially looking at seeing who is accessing our platform, they might be able to predict that there is a potential gap in their security. But without the right monitoring and the right reviews, it won't happen, and therefore you're more likely to be in breach with some of these problems. Now, the next phase of this presentation is where we talk about 4 good practices that we see customers taking on in order to improve the way they manage access within the Anypoint platform. And we wanted to share this with you so that you can also think about whether you're implementing these in your organization. And if you're not, is this something that would be of use to you? And we hope that it is. So the first topic I wanted to cover is business groups. So I'm hoping that all of you know what business groups are, but I do want to give a refresher for anyone who's new. If you can move on to the next slide, we have a description of what business groups are. So business groups, oops, I'm getting a little bit of feedback on my line. Satya, are you able to mute the person who's unmuted?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right. So back to business groups. So business groups are self-contained resource groups that contain Anypoint platform resources. And a simpler way of describing that is they're basically logical separation of the platform to manage resources within the platform, such as VPCs, vCores, environments, or things of that nature, exchange assets. They are designed to be isolated from each other. However, there is the possibility to share things between business groups. Now, business groups are a feature that are available in the Platinum and Titanium subscription level, but those are the 2 most popular levels. So I'm hoping everyone on this call has the ability to use business groups at their organization. Now, if I was to move on to the next slide, you'll notice that one way to think about business groups, which I like to use, is to think about it as a house. So if you think about a house as an organization in the Anypoint platform, business groups are the different areas of the house within the house. So as an example, in a house, you have a common area, which, as long as you enter the house, you might be able to access. But within the house itself, you might have more secure areas, like the bedroom or the kitchen. And you can think of business groups as different areas of this one house. And the resources within these business groups is the furniture within the house or within each room. So for example, you can have a single bed in one of these rooms, or you can have a double bed in a different room. However, the same bed cannot be in 2 rooms at the same time. So there is an ownership aspect to business groups, which is very important to understand. The other thing that you also need to know is that while furniture might belong to a particular room in this house, the people in the house can go to different rooms depending on their privilege. So if you're the owner of the house, you probably can go into any room because it's your house. However, if you're a guest, you might only have permission to go into the living room and the kitchen or the guest bathroom. And that's one way of managing security in a house. And that's how business groups are very similar in that construct. So if we move on to the next slide, in the Anypoint platform, business groups form under a hierarchy. So there's a hierarchy model where you can have a master organization and you can have business groups within that master organization. And the beauty of the model is that you can actually have nested business groups within business groups. So you can see that you can design this to how your organization operates in terms of business units. And it's best practice to actually adapt this to your organization's needs. In the next slide I have here, you can see how I've converted the analogy of the house to potentially what that could look like with business groups. So if you were to imagine a double-story house, you could have the house being the master organization, and then you can have two business groups being the ground floor and the upper level. And then within the ground floor, you might have a kitchen business group and a guest bedroom, and then you have a kitchen storeroom. So you can see how resources can belong to different levels. And if you're imagining that you had to provision water and electricity for this house, you would provision it probably at the house level. You don't want every room to have its own electricity meter. You know, it might be too much. So that's how you can see it makes sense sometimes to have things at the house level where everyone needs to have access, but sometimes it makes sense to have things at the business group level. All right, next slide, please. Now, each business group can actually be allocated a number of resources, as I mentioned. The list on the screen is the types of resources you can allocate. Examples include vCores and VPCs, static IPs. However, the most relevant one I think to emphasize here is environments. So an environment that is within a business group cannot be shared with other business groups and cannot be inherited by child business groups. So for example, you can have a prod in the master, you can have a prod in the business group 1, you can have a prod in sub-business group 1.1. And they are all logically separate. They might even be physically separate depending on your organization as well. But it allows you to control these resources and potentially who has access to them. All right, next slide, please. So just a couple of tips when working with business groups. The first one is that anything that is shared in the organization should be created at the root level, and then you can inherit these in your children business groups. So for example, the most common would be VPCs, DLBs. If you create them in the master, then at least all of the children have the ability to inherit it. However, if you create them at a child level, only business groups that are children of that child can inherit it. They cannot be inherited across the same level. So good practice is to create them at the master and then inherit to any business groups that need access. And the second tip here is that even though there is isolation in business groups, you do have the ability to share between business groups and even between organizations. So you can actually share an API in exchange from one company to a completely external company as well. So this allows you to bridge that gap of silos that you have when you have business groups working. All right, so that covers the topic of business groups. If you use business groups extensively, it'd be nice to hear about it in the chat. If you're unsure about something, you can also pop that in the chat as well. All right, let's move on to our next section, audit logging. So next slide, please, Bernard. So with audit logging, the easiest way I find to describe it is to imagine someone in a security room watching everything that's happening within an organization and then taking detailed notes about it. So anything that happens is logged, nothing escapes their view. And that's what the audit logging function within the Anypoint platform does, is it looks at all the users who are logging into the platform, what actions they're doing, what changes they've done, so that an administrator can understand what changes have been happening in the platform over the last period of time. Now, if you move on to the next slide, you'll see a few more details about what audit logging gives us. So it gives us a queryable history of actions within the platform. So not only is it logged, you can actually search through them, which is quite useful. So in the example of the Cisco employee, you could potentially see, when was the last time a certain user logged in? And if that person is no longer employed by your company, then that's a red flag, because if they're logged in after they've left the company, you should revoke their access, but you should also find out what activities they have done. Maybe they have done something malicious. It's important to note that the logs are retained for 6 years, which is quite a long period of time. However, some customers choose to download these logs or potentially use the audit logging API to store them somewhere else. So you can take the logs and take them somewhere else so that you have a centralized log store. However, with logging, the most use of logging comes when you actually review the logs to find things that shouldn't be happening. So some of the work will be reactive. Like if we move on to the next screen, you'll see what the UI looks like when you're trying to browse through the audit logs. And just for anyone who's new, the audit log section is in the access management part of the platform. So you'll notice that there are some drop-down filters available at the top where you can say filter by users or by type of action. So it's quite easy to navigate. The most important thing is to have a process to see reactively what happened. So for example, someone might have deleted an application from UAT. Find out who did that and potentially why. The other option is to have a process for proactive monitoring. So for example, who are the unique users who logged in every month? If you only have 10 people in your integration team and there are 12 people who are logging in every month, find out who those other two are. Are they people in your organization or have they left? Should they be having access? And what are they doing with their access? These are the types of questions that as administrators, we should be asking. And if you're not an admin, hopefully your admin in the company is doing this. You can share these tips with them. All right, so that's audit logs. So that covers 2 of the 4 topics we wanted to talk about today. Now, Bernard has very kindly put together some material on identity management in teams, which he's going to share about. And in the meanwhile, I'll answer the questions in the chat. So Bernard, over to you.
Thank you, Royston. So I'll be covering the next 2 topics, identity management and teams. So the first type of identity management that I would like to bring across to you would be multi-factor authentication. So what this is really MFA helps to protect you by adding an additional layer of security, making it harder for non-authorized users to log in. So and because of this, information is then safer because thieves would need to steal both your password and your phones, for example, to do the login. I think for a lot of our banking applications that we are currently having, this is one of the authentication that we actually go through on a daily basis. So MFA is also a security measure that is made available on the Anypoint platform and should be implemented across all users as a recommendation. So with that being said, this is really a graphical representation of what MFA constitutes, and it is authentication, with minimally just 2 devices. So perhaps you have your user and your login to your platform. That is done through the computer, and then you have a secondary authorization that is then sent through your phone. Which then provide additional security, and this is really highly recommended, as with any login process, and more so with your API assets on Anypoint platform. So, access management in Anypoint enables admin to manage and monitor MFA for users. So how this is done is, the configuration of MFA for users on Anypoint platform is easily managed by the admin. It can be mandated that all users requires MFA when they sign on. Or, if you want to, you can also set certain assumptions that can be made for users with regards to MFA. So the configuration is highly customizable and intuitive. So for example, if a member loses his mobile phone, MFA can also be easily revoked off the system on Anypoint platform. Similarly, if a staff member or a team member has left the company or does not require such access to the platform, the revoking can be done easily as well. So the second part of external identity management would be the configuration of single sign-on. So single sign-on for the Anypoint platform can be done by configuration in 2 ways. The first being OpenID Connect and the second being SAML 2.0. For the demo that I'll be showing at the end of my presentation, we'll be using SAML 2.0 and Okta for the configuration demo. So these are some of the OpenID Connect supports, Ping Federate, OpenAM, and Okta, as well as the SAML support. We have Ping Federate, OpenAM, Okta, and we have many others. So just a brief summary of what SSO is and why we should use single sign-on. So really, IT can define access based on user profiles, groups, network, clients, and consent. So this enable users to have easy access to the platform using single sign-on. And how we are able to onboard the users is also done relatively easily through Okta. With that, API access can be provisioned, and as well, we can also provision our application access. So we are able to give certain rights capability, based on who the personnel is and who the team members are, using single sign-on capabilities. With that being said, the dev team can then securely design, develop, test, and deploy APIs in our using SSO, and then allow access to these assets easily to other members or developers. So this is really how the application user page will look like on Okta. So upon onboarding team members, how it actually works is just sending an invite out, whereby the team members will then receive an invitation email, of which all the team members needs to do is to actually set a password for himself, his email being the username and the password of which he sets himself, and he will be able to be granted access to the platform itself through the Okta SSO. So from the screenshot, we see here that we have 4 different active members that's on the platform, and these members can also be easily removed as and when we want to do it. So the next topic I'll be covering is on Teams, which is a new function on the Anypoint platform, and I think this would be something that will pique your interest. Okay, so how did Teams come about, and why did the people behind the Teams product develop such an avenue to customize personnel and to segregate personnel or team members? So some of the pain points that we discovered were that managing users and permission across multiple business groups were complicated. The org admin had to define roles and assign users for each business group, or to some extent even, the admin had to kind of individually set permission rights for each individual members. So imagine for an organization that has perhaps 200 members, that would be very time consuming, as well as it is difficult to kind of specify 200 different kinds of permission rights. So instead, what we decided to do with Teams is to have them group as teams, so that we are able to kind of compartmentalize each grouping and to put members in as to their respective access capabilities. Also, with Exchange Access, we would like certain team members perhaps to only gain access to certain Exchange assets or APIs, for the matter of fact. So with Teams, we are able to do that easily based on their compartment and where and how they are segregated into. So what is Teams? So Teams provide user grouping mechanism in Anypoint platform that enables collaboration and reuse. So while business groups, earlier presented by Royston, governs the allocation of resources, Teams governs the allocation of personnel and team members. So one is resource and one is people, team members. So Teams allows for org admin to do the following, which is to implement hierarchy org, parent-child configuration, and also allows easy assignment of global and team level permissions. And lastly, we are also able to map SSO groupings to teams. So from your Okta configuration, you're actually able to kind of map the groupings onto teams and reflect that on the Anypoint platform. So Teams for org admin. So if you are if you manage a Anypoint platform organization, this is what actually you can do. Basically, as mentioned earlier, is to do up the parent and child configuration, then assign the different permissions that you want. And also, if you want to go one step further, is to really map the SSO sign-on to the teams, and then the grouping can be reflected accordingly. So also do note that all child teams actually will inherit all permissions from the parent team. However, with the child teams, you are then able to go a step further to kind of add on more permissions or restrictions, for the matter of fact. Yeah. So like mentioned, if there are certain capabilities on the platform that you want to restrict or allow access to, this can be done really easily, and I will show this in the demo later on. So for example, if you want to set a permission for the engineering team, and so with that, maybe engineering team 1, engineering team 2 will then inherit the parent permission. But if for example, if engineering 1 should not have access to certain assets, then that can be further customized at the char level. So I think why Teams capabilities is such a useful function is really to kind of manage the turnover of employers. So, with this, like what we mentioned with the audit earlier on, to actually remove an employee or or someone that actually do not requires access to certain capabilities can be done so easily on Teams with just really a click of a button. And we can also set members and maintenance. Maintainers having more rights. So you can think of maintainers as like little admins, whereby they are able to kind of manage the team as a whole. So if you are an org admin and there are just too many team members or too many people in organization, we can then set additional maintainers in each individual teams, whereby they are then able to kind of allow access or revoke access or do team member transfer as a maintainer. Yeah, so that's the right that we can give personnel as well in each individual teams. So really, I think this slide is really important because it allows us to kind of understand business grouping and teams. So again, business group governs the resources allocation, such as your vCores and the environments. Teams, on the other hand, allows for the allocation of permission rights for segregated groups for people, for team members. But don't view them as two different entities or two different capabilities. Business group and teams work in tandem to provide any platform users more flexibility with access control and management. So what it really does is it allows the admin to kind of segregate resources and people easily. And if there are any crossover, to allow that to happen as well, while maintaining the correct accessibility level for each team member. Okay, so with that explanation being said, I'm going to show you a quick demo on how Teams will actually look like, and perhaps how you encounter Teams for the first time on the platform. So just very quickly, I'm going to show you how Okta looks like first. So with Okta, this is after I sign in on the admin account. So for admin users for Okta, you will actually only be able to see this admin button at the top right-hand corner. So if you see the main screen pane, what you see is MuleSoft Anypoint platform, which has been configured. So this is the only application I have on this account, whereby if I click on it, it will actually redirect me automatically onto the Anypoint platform. So having a look at the admin page, this is really good as well because Okta actually allows you to kind of do an add-on MFA, multi-factor authorization, if you would like to. And this can be kind of mapped out to all the users for Okta SSO. So let's say you have other members that you have added on. You can also kind of require them to have this additional access feature. Yep. So after logging into the account, typically what we would do is to go and look at the people on the account. So you can see that there are a couple of people who are active here, and really to remove them, it's the same way as how you would add them. Like you can just add a person and have their particulars here. And so for the username, which I mentioned earlier, it will be the team member's email, whereby the invitation would then be sent to the team member, of which they will then be able to kind of set up a password for themselves and have access to the platform. We can also then look at the groupings. So we can then set admin groups, developer groups, so whereby we can do the segregation of people here as well. If we go into application, we can then see that we have MuleSoft Anypoint platform application configured. And this is where the assignment and groups can then be further modified. And we can also kind of remove people very easily off the platform. Okay, so this is Okta single sign-on. I'll now take you onto Anypoint platform. Okay, so if you go to access management, also before I begin, right, I would like to add as well as this is an admin account. So this is the org admin account whereby the account has access to all functionalities. So if you look at the left-hand pane, you wouldn't see a tab Teams. So, but don't worry, Teams is a new function, and because the product team wanted that to be kind of like roll out progressively, they actually had a toggle button at the bottom, try new features, where you have to click before you could activate Teams. So if we do just that, click on try new features, we can then see that Teams is available. So we can start using these features. Right, following which we are then able to see who are the users that are active on this platform. The users that we see here are users that have successfully logged in from the single sign-on. So, after you have sent out the email invitation, if the user has not made the first login, the user will not be the user particulars will not appear here. However, once the first login is done, you will then see the user as a member of the platform. So what really Teams is a new feature whereby, okay, so we have everyone at MuleSoft, and if you click at everyone at MuleSoft, you will see all the team members that are here. If you go back, we can see that we can set a char team, and we can then just let me do a demo on that. So if we want to create a char team, we can just click on the three dot icon here, and we can perhaps name this as admin. And we can do just that. So to add members into the teams on the platform, we can just do add members, and perhaps add somebody from as a member, and we add it in. After which, most importantly, is we would like to provide certain permission access capabilities. So we'll click on permission. And because there are no permission configured onto the parent account, hence there are no inherited permission. But what we can do is we can add permissions. So if we just select a couple of them in random, we can then, of which after we select the access, we can then select the business group allocation as well. So we have MuleSoft being the main one, and then we have a char business group, which is customer success. So if you want to just select customer success, and for environment, we can just select all as well. So we can then add these permissions. So for the admin team now, you will see that the permissions have been configured. And if you just want to do a little bit more testing, right, we can just create a char team really quickly down on admin. Let's name this admin 1. And we can see that what all the permissions that we have configured in admin is then inherited by admin 1, as we can see in the following screen. Of which, if there are certain capabilities that you want to kind of add on, you can just add permission. And, this will then be specifically for admin 1. So I will not do that. And yeah, that's basically the team function. And also to remove member, it's really that simple, right? Just one click of a button. So, if a certain employee in a certain team has left or do not belong to the team anymore, the admin can really kind of track down the access rights for that team member and remove if need be. Yep. So that's really the end of the demo. But just to continue on the last slide. So in summary, what we have concluded for this meetup is that there are 3 important things to take away. Firstly, is the utilization of single sign-on or MFA, whereby it really provides that additional level of management and security for the platform as a whole. And it really allows the admin to govern the members and the access rights much easier if you think about it. So second would be to use audits to monitor account activities. So like what Royston mentioned earlier, we should try to cultivate the habit to have the audit logs kind of look at or monitor on a periodic basis, perhaps every 2 weeks or every month, just to see if there are any unusual activities that should not be happening. And then, if so, right, we can then do the rectification quickly by perhaps removing certain team members that are not supposed to be there or whatnot. And lastly is to use Teams, right? With the new function, we really hope that if you're on the platform, that you use Teams to kind of segregate your members, use it as well together with business groups to kind of do the allocation, whereby everything is then very easily monitored and managed. So with that, we've come to the end of the presentation, and we're happy to take any question from the audience. Thank you.
Thanks, Bernard. It was a very nice session.
Thank you, Satya.
And thanks, Rashton. If anybody has any questions, any kind of queries, any kind of doubt, please, feel free to ask. We'll take questions for, let's say, for 5 minutes before we jump into, the trivia quiz. Okay. Just, unmute yourself and feel free to ask the questions.
While we're waiting for people to ask their questions, I'd be very interested if anyone has enabled Teams already and any experiences you've had so far. So even if it's not a question, if you've enabled Teams or in the last 20 minutes you decided to log onto the platform and enable it, let us know what you think.
Hi, Rostan. This is Sumita here. I do have one question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so basically when we incorporate this SSO for maybe some sort of what we can say domain or something, so if we just create maybe a child out of it, so is it inherited or like we just need to provide SSO separately for that particular child?
So let me see if I understood your question correctly. So you're asking, you've configured SSO at the parent level,
Right.
and the question is, do you need different SSO config for children of that org? The answer at this point in time is that there is only one external identity configuration for an organization in the Anypoint platform. You can configure SSOs such that, depending on which group they are, they can have access to certain business groups. But what you can't fundamentally have is, maybe the parent organization is Okta, and then the child business group is Azure AD. That is not possible as of now.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. But typically external identity is also configured only at the parent, and then it is inherited by the children. However, just because someone has access to the parent doesn't mean they have access to the children. So it is very, very fine-grained, and it's by design. It's so that these business groups are treated like fortresses, and you can open doors when you want to, as opposed to an open garden where anyone can come and just walk in. Thank you for your question.
Okay, thanks. That answers my question. Thank you.
Hi, Royston and Bernard. So I noticed that we can set permissions for teams, but is there any way to set it for individuals?
Yeah, thanks, Benedict, for your question. Yeah, so yes, that can be done as well, individual setting of permissions. So what I can do is my screen still on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you want to, right, this would be the way that we wouldn't recommend, because then it gets confusing and a bit tedious at the same time. But if you want to do that, right, all you need to do is click onto a user, whereby you can then set individual permissions like you would for entire team, but this is just going to be for the individual.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
So it can be done. Yeah. Thanks, Benedict.
Thank you. Sorry, can I just follow up? Is there any way where we can set like a preset permission? So for example, we know that certain people in certain roles generally will have certain permission. Is there a way that we can configure it that way? Or do we always have to find each permission and check it?
Benedict, do you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, Benedict, so are you trying to, thank you for your question, but are you asking if we can do it in a automated fashion?
Not so much, right? But let's say if we scroll down, maybe there's 50 checkboxes, right?
Okay.
And let's say if someone is in a certain position, we can expect that they will always have access to certain, maybe 20 out of these 50 permissions. Is there any way that we can say, okay, let's create this preset of 20 out of 50, and if someone joins the company, we can just use it, or do we just manually go through it?
Okay. So I think with that is when we would actually recommend the usage of teams, in that sense whereby, okay, for example, if we have 5 different developer groups within an organization, perhaps developer group, the first group to the 5th group have different access rights. So if we know that the new team member is coming into developer 1, into the first development team, so if we do it in teams, right, we actually really preset the permissions for that particular team, whereby if that member joins, and if that member is placed in that team, he would automatically have that set of permission rights, or inherit that permission rights.
Awesome, thank you. That makes sense.
Thanks, Benedict.
So I have one question.
Bernard, go ahead, go in.
Thank you. So can one user be a part of multiple teams?
Yes, thank you for your question, and that is possible. So just let me do a quick demo for you since we are here. So if you see Bernard.2018 in developer, we can do the same for this. Yep, it can be done. So, based on what is required for that member and what kind of access rights the admin want to kind of provision for that member, the member can actually be placed in multiple teams.
So do we have any like place where we can see which user is assigned to which groups? Like if I have n number of user, I want to see the list.
Okay, so if you go to users, I believe this is possible.
Hey Bernard, just see if you can pick the last option from those users as opposed to the first one. No, it wouldn't be. Which was the one? I think it's that one. Yeah, the one that uses your school email. Yep, and then click on memberships.
Yep, that's right. Thank you for that. Yeah, so we're actually able to see that. So if we click on Bernard.T.2018, yeah, we then see that that account is a member in development admin.
So like if I have n number of user, I have to go one by one for each users, or do we have any consolidated?
So if, for example, right, if we want to kind of find out where Bernard test is placed into, so I believe this would be good for maybe like removal of teams, of the personnel in teams. So if you want to remove, if you want to find out where Bernard test is, right, we can just click on the name in users, of which if we click onto membership, we can then see where the user is placed in, and then we can do the following to remove the users if you want to. Yeah.
I think if we, to whoever asked the question, I think it's Govind, sorry. If you are looking for maybe a different answer, just give us a little more context as to what would be your reason
a consolidated report, like where I can see, like I have 100 users. Okay.
Yeah.
So these 100 users are assigned to which teams?
Sorry, what would be the purpose of this report that you're using this information for?
Tomorrow, a user is not as a part of our organization, so I can just pull out that report and see if that user is there in that, like for any verification.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing, there's 2 things that we're potentially looking for. One is, can we have some sort of reporting capability, which would be consolidated? The answer is out of the box, there's no immediate capability for what you're looking for. However, there are two very useful things that are worth mentioning. One is that the platform APIs are available for you to get this same user information. However, if you've got SSO configured, you can also go to Okta or Azure AD or your IDP to get the information from there. So that's one way. The other is that there is a platform utilities which can extract out the different users and all the roles that they have granted to them. I'll share a link to the chat in a few minutes. So that's another way you can do this. This is to get the reporting. However, if you want to use the reporting to remove people, then it is better to use something like what we've seen here, where you can go to an individual and remove them, because the report is not necessarily actionable. It's just information in front of you. So it really depends on what the use case is in order to find the right place to do the activity. But I'll share that link with you just in case you find benefit.
So Royston Bernard, one question, like if we have an SSO enable authorization using external IDP, so how the permission role group mapping happens from the external IDP using Teams?
Bernard, this one's for you.
Okay, yeah, thank you for your question. So how we can do that is really through, so your question is really to map the users grouping from the external identity provider onto Teams, right?
Yes.
Okay, so actually we can use Active Directory for that. And to really configure the Teams grouping on the IDP, which then can be reflected onto Teams. So I can just do a quick demo, although I do not have that set up, but I can roughly show you how it can be done. So if you go into developer, you can actually go to settings, of which you can see that there is this function external IDP grouping. So the naming convention that you have done for, let's say in Okta for this example, you can then just put it here and then you can then add it into the configuration for Teams. Yeah.
Okay. And does it supports for both the protocols? Like if we go for SAML also and OIDC also? Like if the IDP supports both the SAML and OIDC, both protocols, that will be applicable for both, right?
For SAML, yes. Weston, are you sure? Do you have any insights on the other one?
I'm not confident on the OIDC answer. However, yeah, SAML to my knowledge is supported. The best place to look is the docs for that one, just to get confirmation on that one.
I will actually
just for additional context there, the Teams capability with SSO and role mapping is designed to work very similar to how roles in the platform were previously did with role mapping. So whatever, if it worked with roles, it probably will work with Teams. Like we haven't reduced functionality. We've increased capability with the ability to have Teams.
Okay, so with roles in OIDC, it's not working, like the group role mappings are not there. So I thought it will be an enhanced feature in Teams. Okay, so it will be same only.
Yeah,
all
if it's not there in roles, I highly doubt it'll be there in Teams. But yeah, please check the docs for 100% information.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
I also just place a documentation link for you for your review in case you're looking for it.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're at top of the hour, so probably a good time to go to Kahoot. Satya.
Sure. Yeah, we'll go to the Kahoot now. And thanks, Rostan. Thanks, Bandar. It was a very nice session, and thanks you all for attending. If you are, interested, any of you to speak in this our meetup group, please reach out to us, through to the meetup page. And if you would like to have some kind of special session, a special topic to be covered in any of the meetup, please, send your topic. We will try to arrange those topics as soon as possible with the coordination of the MuleSoft and other our mentor and the champions and ambassador. Okay, we'll talk with them and definitely will arrange those kind of topics which is beneficial to you and your customer. Okay, let me share my screen quickly and we'll go for the trivia. Hope everyone is able to see my screen.
Yep, that's coming through.
Can you please paste this?
We have 26 participants, only 19 joined. So out of that, 2 to 4 here. See, that 2. Okay, I think we should start now. Is anybody else joining? We have 19 participants. We'll wait for 1 minute. Okay, we'll start the game now. Good, Amar, Rakesh, Girdhar, Benedict, Syam. Okay, I'm going to next question. Next question. Jinge, Kunal, Mani, Rakesh, Ravi. Great. Is the next question? Great. Jinge in top. Next question. And the last question. Great. Asis, congratulations. Nitin, congratulations.
Thank you.
Money, congratulations. So,
Thank you.
top 3 winners, you will get the certification vouchers. And top 10 winners, Siranjani is going to send you some kind of goodies. Okay, let's see who all are top 10 winners. I will share the reports. Yeah. So top 10 till Amar. I will send your name through a mass mail, okay, to all the attendees. Okay, please share your details as a reply of that mail, okay, and then we'll send your details to the MuleSoft for sending your certification voucher, and Siranjani will send you the goodies. Okay, thanks everyone, and it was a very nice session, very useful session, very knowledgeable session. Thanks Bernard and Rastan for speaking in our group, and hopefully we'll arrange many more sessions in this group as well as the Riyadh group. Will be in contact. And anyone, if you would like to share speak in this our group, please let us know. If you want to have any kind of special session in special topic, there are a lot of features, new features are coming in the MuleSoft, right? So in the last session in Dubai, we had already discussed on that area. So if you want to have any kind of session, for example, data graph or anything, please let us know. We'll arrange that. And very soon we'll announce the next session. On 30th of this month, we have another session in Dubai Meetup group. Okay, and please register for that. We will be discussing about the AnyPoint security on that group. Thanks everyone. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Happy
Thank
weekend.
you, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Satya, do we have to ping our email ID in the chat or?
You can ping the email ID in the chat, or what we will do, I will just send the mail to everyone. Okay, all the winners, you just reply to that mail. Okay, I'll send
Sure.
you
Thank
sometime
you.
by the end of the day or by tomorrow.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you, everyone.